Ho, ho, ho. The password is Fidelio. All right.
I couldn't hear the bells very much.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho. The
There, yeah,
password.
yeah.
I don't have to do it again.
No, yeah, that's good. I thought, well, I have my somewhere around here is my little Casio. I was gonna learn the little two notes just to. It's only two notes, by the way.
Is
That
it?
score. Ding, 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 ding,
Okay.
ding. Just over and over
Wait,
again
what?
in different variations.
Somehow still less annoying than the third man.
It's yeah. Yeah, it's deceptively simple. There's even a moment where I felt like, at least when I was listening, like it should go to a higher note and then it just doesn't. This is one of those scores that like it feels I can't even really imagine any other kind of music. I mean, most of like the majority of it is just the classical music, right?
Yeah.
That he loves to use in his movies.
But yeah, I mean, there's moments where other music comes in and it's noticeable,
Hmm.
um, or it accents what's going on. But yeah, it's really sparse
Yeah.
when it happens.
Yeah. I read that one of I guess the composer was she's mainly a cellist, I think. And there's one stretch of music it's just like a solo cello and she's playing it herself and yeah, it is very bare
That's cool.
bones.
Yeah, it's the two moments that I'm thinking about are both of the dreams have sustained strings
Hmm.
that come out of silence.
Yeah.
The first, the music there. If you want to get into that moment, I mean, talk all
Yeah,
day about that scene. But
when
when she falls to the ground,
uh-huh.
and she starts in about the fantasy and seeing
Yeah.
the guy.
Yeah. The music in that scene
The
is
strings come in,
fantastic.
and then again when he comes back after his night, and she's dreaming and wakes up, and then there's the strings, and they're a little bit more animated, but it's kind of the same
Yeah.
thing.
Man, yeah, it's funny that both I think we were both sick this past week, right?
I was down for a week, man.
Yeah,
I
I was too, and we both watched this movie completely independently of each other.
Yeah, and me for the first time. It had been on the top of my list for a long time. I don't know how I've Rip Van Winkled this one for
Yeah.
so long, but I'm glad that I did. And you said that you hadn't really watched it since your first time, and you weren't very
Yeah.
receptive to it the first time,
Yeah, I hadn't seen it.
like
The
most
first time
folks.
I saw it, I think I was it's
You had to be
been
young, right?
yeah, I mean it must have been definitely a decade or more. And the first time I saw it, I think I was just like it just most of it kind of went over my head. I felt like it was a little long. I didn't really I had seen a bunch of Kubrick movies and when I watched that, I was like, well, what? This is not really like what he normally does. I mean, there's all those kinds of camera things that you can immediately recognize that he does, but yeah, I think I just didn't appreciate it for what it was. And then in recent years, I feel like especially, I sent you that podcast from Blank Check. When I listened to that,
Oh my God,
it was
we've
kind of like
yeah.
that was kind of like oh, this is actually regarded as like one of his best movies, and like people actually really love it, and it's especially in recent years garnered this new kind of critical reception.
Totally.
And I started thinking more and more about it, and I was like, yeah, I should rewatch. And that was like 2 years ago, and I was like, yeah, I should rewatch that. And then finally this year, I was putting together a list of holiday movies on Letterboxd, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a great Christmas movie,
Oh
and
yeah,
I put it on, and this time, man, I was like locked in
same,
from beginning to end. Yeah.
same.
I just it was kind of mind blowing. I mean, there's so much we can talk about. I don't know how to really even start here because there's so many different things we can get into. But
Well, let's start with you. Let's start with the finding thing that I
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah, okay. You've
So I've composed my Zoom shot to
yeah.
be Kubrickian.
Hmm. Yeah, which for the listener, if you want to check out the YouTube version of this,
We're on YouTube.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. Yeah, cover up. No, for one thing, I see on your bed there in your guest room is your Yamaha reface. Is that the Oregon one?
That's the
That's the
organ.
yeah the red one, and
Red.
directly above it is a copy of my zine that I made about four
Yeah.
years ago.
Your
That has a
face.
portrait of myself on the back of it. And I mean, for one thing, the light in your room is glowing very much like the lights in this film glow.
Yeah, it's got the strong backlight
Yeah, there's a very
window
hazy,
with an
bright, hazy
indistinguishable
glow.
outside.
Yeah, with the lamp there. I can't tell exactly what's on the nightstand if that's if you've incorporated anything there or not.
So
But
yeah, it's hard to tell. Maybe in the 4K version of this, you'll be able
yeah,
to.
we'll release a steelbook of this podcast next year.
There's two cacti and red and green
Oh, nice.
planters
Okay,
and a
nice.
little plastic red apple.
Oh, very good. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm in my orgy
And
master.
yeah, and you have donned yourself as the red cloak master here. Yeah, I wish I had a little mask of some kind that could.
Yeah, I
I
was
don't
looking
have
around
anything
for my
around me.
sleep no more mask, but it must.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's probably in my old.
I would love to have the one that the guy with the big pirate hat, that really big
The
mask that
tri
comes out.
color.
Yeah, that's a really cool mask.
There's so many good ones in that confrontation scene. The masks are especially good.
Hmm.
Those close-ups are incredible.
Yeah, that moment, especially so right when he walks in. I guess when we actually talk about the movie, we should go kind of like scene by scene, but
I don't
there are
know.
just so many.
Yeah, there's so many
Not that it
things
even
you
really
could.
matters either, but that moment when he first walks into the room to the ritual already in progress, and those people who I believe to be Ziegler and his wife. I don't know if you subscribe to that theory.
The two on the balcony.
The two on the balcony who look at him and nod
Um,
very slowly.
I don't think that it's him, but
Okay.
I see why you would. I totally
Yeah.
see why you would. Yeah.
It's that same character runs into him again later
Yeah,
in
he
that
comes
same
in
scene.
and nods, tries to get a girl to take him somewhere, but the
Yeah.
Mandy intervenes, and yeah, I don't know why. I don't think it's him. Well, I do know why I think it's him.
Okay.
I think that he caught wind of him being there, might have put it together.
Uh-huh.
Um, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, he
And
says later that he was
oh, there was a
there,
receipt. There was a receipt
yeah.
made out to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So it very well could have gotten to him that he was there, and I think he's trying to protect him. To be honest,
Yeah. That whole
uh,
scene at his house with the pool table is kind of like, he's like, "Look, this I know everything." You we know it was you and we found you out and you need to just like drop this whole
yeah,
situation. There was
yeah.
something I what do you so in
I
the
had different. I rewatched it again today, and I
uh-huh.
had very different readings
Oh,
and
interesting. Okay.
of different scenes. Not entirely, but of most of it. And I was also looking, for a lot of things because
Hmm.
between just living with this movie, even not having seen it until now, it's lived in my consciousness. I
Yeah.
think in anybody's consciousness who was was interested in movies around then, or who was following pop culture at all. It's kind of a hard moment to avoid that movie. I
Yeah.
remember, I mean, and I really wanted to get this into the podcast because I remember my preacher like mentioning it
Mm.
in a
Oh,
sermon.
wow. Wow.
Like it was that big of
Yeah.
a pop culture moment.
Yeah.
That I don't remember what he said, but it was like something disparaging about his artistic genius or something,
Hmm.
and it being
Hmm.
this movie that is maybe pornographic or attacks marriage,
Right. Which is
um
crazy to think about looking at it now, how honestly pretty tame it is. it's just so, like,
Or
I mean,
and some readings is like reaffirms the strength of marriage and what two people can endure, and
yeah,
I don't
but
know, there's
it's so interesting that it was kind of sold initially as this like erotic thriller, and
yeah,
it's based around the
I can
Hollywood
see
power
why, but
couple of
like
the moment, and everybody's like, "Oh, we're actually gonna see these two fuck on screen," and like all this
exactly,
stuff, and then it's this
you're
completely
gonna see
different
Tom
thing.
Cruise dead.
Right, it's this completely different thing where not only do we never see these characters have sex with each other or anyone else, all the sex in the movie is seen at a distance and is presented in this kind of cold, unnatural, very alien way where everyone's wearing a mask. There's no sense of like intimacy. It's all about just like this kind of almost kind of transactional.
It's
um
power. It's power.
yeah,
Sex is power.
exactly, exactly. It's linked to the power. There's so much about like power and money, rolling through this entire thing. I'm trying not to pull too much from other,
I
shows
think
that I listen
no,
to because
no,
it was
say it
like,
all, because this is, the other thing is that, you and I came to this very fresh
hmm
this week, and then I was like, "Oh, send me things. I'll send you things." And you sent, and I sent you a couple videos, and then you sent me three podcasts. The first of which was 3 hours long, and I was like,
yeah,
"Oh my god, I've
yeah,
got so much
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
catch up on." There's so, and then you start looking, and I was like, "Oh my god, this turns out to be, like most of Stanley Kubrick's movies, like the most talked about movie, the most, reevaluated,
hmm
and lends itself to conspiracy nuts. This, like some of the stuff that thing that I sent you this week, where Roger Avery was on Joe
hmm
Rogan's
hmm
podcast claiming that there's this other version that they don't want you to see, that's got the narration, that's got all 20 minutes of uncut footage, that reveals the secrets of Hollywood pedo sex cults, and it's
Yeah,
and
and
poor
that's just
Quentin
like the
Tarantino's trapped there to,
right.
lend it some legitimacy, and he
Yeah,
definitively is like, they finished the movie,
yeah,
and like it has nothing
yeah,
else to say about it.
yeah.
Really.
I mean, everything you look at when is like, all of by all accounts, by all accounts of the people involved. Kubrick finishes the movie. He shows the final cut to Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman and the Warner Brothers executives, and then he dies 6 days later.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were some obvious kind of things that needed to be sort of put together and filled in for the theatrical release, and then they did alter some things a little more for the home release too. Was it supposed to be in the 4:3 aspect ratio initially?
I have no idea about
I read
that.
that on something and I was like, that baffles me for one thing, because this movie especially was meant to be seen widescreen. I mean,
Mhm.
everything you look at in the frame is part of the shot. So I found it very hard to believe that he initially intended for it to be a 4:3 ratio. But yeah, it's
All
one of
that I
those
saw was
movies.
about the digital editions of bodies to get the NC-17 rating, and
Yeah.
that there was written into the script an internal monologue, but I, I can see him running with the cut without it, without ever intending it to be in the movie, as it just kind of
hmm
like something to ground Tom Cruise's performance or something, like,
Yeah.
like
I mean, coming from the class of 99, that like the fabled class of 99, that movie year, being the first real like super online generation of people like talking about things and forums and chat rooms, and it feels like that movie was one of the first to really kind of be swept up in the sort of conspiratorial nature of like a lot of online spaces. That along with the same year Blair Witch Project comes out, right? There were all these crazy conspiracy theories about
oh
the
my
Blair
god, I
Witch
believed it was
Project.
real.
And
I
yeah,
slept in my
and like,
parents' room.
and that was like, that for that film, it was largely due to the marketing being like doing that intentionally, and these
Yeah.
fake stories that they planted and everything. But this movie, it's like I told you the other day, it's a bottomless rabbit hole of stuff that you can go down. I mean, the Reddit boards, the podcast, the YouTube explainer videos, that thing you just sent me with like the what's that thing
The
called?
Trump Novell,
Yeah,
the or
no,
the
it's like just analyzing a certain shot, and it's got it's from
oh,
Roger
hang on.
Deakins'
Oh yeah,
website.
Roger Deakins last year was like, hey,
Yeah,
how the hell did he compose this shot in the bathroom when she's grabbing the weed, um, and it doesn't reveal
the camera
cameras
in
or
the
lights or
mirror.
anything, and it's because there's like a cutout in the wall behind her.
Yeah, for the
Um,
camera.
yeah, yeah, we send each other
Um,
a lot of stuff, and I listen to
yeah.
like probably 8 hours of podcast or
hmm
something like
Yeah.
ridiculous,
Yeah, I
and
caught
read
up
a
on
ton of
the
articles, and I'm still like surprised, still interested, still have questions.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is a movie that one of the things that I love to sit and think about the kind of unanswerable questions of it, especially given that, he didn't that he died before the film was released, and so he himself has never been able to talk about it, right?
Which is this wonder, it's horrible, but it's
R
wonderful that
right,
he
right.
that
It's
it will
firmly like
forever. And Tom and
held
Cruise
in
are
time.
separated, and they will
hmm
probably never see like eye to eye about this project or
hmm
speak about it in a way.
And I don't think they've really talked
Or
about it much ever since either. That I
I'm
was
sure
able
they.
to find.
I think that there may have been some things in recent years of like the 20th or this year the 25th anniversary.
hmm
With Baby Girl, it feels like she's returning to like another so
Yeah,
erotic
yeah,
thriller.
yeah. It is interesting that
Um,
that's coming out this year. That being, yeah, it's a similar. There was one thing in that there's a behind the scenes sort of interviews from the Blu-ray that I checked out from the library, and they were done actually like I think right before the movie was released or right after the movie was released. So they were still together at the time, and then they famously split up like the next year, I think. She's talking about the shoot and how long it was and how they all the stuff they had to go through and the interviewer asks her a really great question where he's like, "Do you think that you'll ever be in a movie like this again or like a part of this kind of project ever again?" And she definitively is like, "This will never happen again. Like what we did,
oh yeah,
what we went through with this kind of
and it
director,
will never happen for him again.
yeah,
That goes
this,
without him
yeah,
needing to say
exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're both like so open about how close they were with him during this and how uh truly shocked and saddened they were by him dying. I mean, they both kind of
Oh yeah,
tear up
yeah.
in both of those interviews. The thing that I mentioned to you earlier was that he's talking about the scene when after he tells her everything, basically towards the end of the film, after he tells her everything, and she's sitting there, and it's just a shot of her like smoking, and she's disheveled, and has
Mhm.
been looks like she's been crying, and he was like, "This is such a powerful shot, and you look like you've been crying for hours. I was wondering how you like got to that place." And she just, without missing a beat, goes, "I cried for hours."
How did you do it? You look like you've been crying for hours. How
Yeah,
did you do it? I
she's
cried
just
for
like,
hours.
"I cried for hours,"
She's like, we had
and it's
time,
just,
and
yeah,
they did.
yeah,
And yeah, the making of that is like I talked about with McCabe. It's like the more you learn about it, the more it lends itself to the movie. The
hmm
more of what is real and what isn't, which lends itself to the movie.
yeah,
Um, yeah, the outer and inner world mingling. I mean, like to just like I've kind of been humbled by the two of them and humbled by Tom
hmm
Cruise especially
hmm
um visiting this movie because I think it's just an absolute knockout, and
yeah.
anybody that says otherwise, I have a bone to pick, and I've heard a lot of people say things like that, and people criticize whatever about his
Yeah,
performance, and I
the
just
yeah,
say I couldn't disagree more.
I
I
know the
love I
thing
think
that I am pushing back on a lot is the take that I heard, which was that their performances are bad or like intentionally bad acting, and I'm just like, no, that's just not.
No.
That's not the
Well,
the
okay,
point was
yeah,
the point was that it's bad, but it's right for the film, which I do agree that it is right for the film. But I also don't think it's. I've seen Tom Cruise be bad, you know,
right.
and like he can be bad in a movie, and I don't I can't really say if I've ever seen Nicole Kidman be bad for sure or not. Okay, yeah, she's bad in the Batman in Batman Forever, but
Oh no, she's beautiful. I will not
I
have
mean
any of
she's hot
that.
as hell, but
This whole good
she's not
bad
doing
thing,
great things.
I have to put it to bed.
Hmm.
Like I don't know. I wanted to bring up something in regards specifically to just to the notion of good and bad
Yeah,
acting.
yeah.
Another article that I said is like is it good acting or is it right acting or
Hmm.
you know whatever you I remember when I myself was a young actor,
Hmm.
um, in my 20s and coming across, I don't know why this one little article got my brain, but like Wes Anderson's Criterion Top 10,
Hmm.
reading through that on the internet, and this is published in like 2010. I don't
Yeah,
whenever I saw that talking about Roberto Rossellini's The Taking of Power by Louis the something. I can't do
15 or
Roman numbers.
something. Yeah.
Maybe yes, 14.
Hmm.
Maybe. Um, I've not seen this movie. He says, "This is a wonderful and very strange movie. I had never heard of it. The man who plays Louis cannot give a convincing line reading, even to the ears of someone who can't speak French, and yet he is fascinating. I was in his corner from start to finish, which comes unexpectedly. Blah 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 blah. Mainly, he just walks in and out of rooms and dresses and undresses. I want to watch it again. What does good acting actually mean?" And I just remembered that
Yeah,
for forever.
yeah.
And then getting into my mind about untrained actors and different styles and just yeah,
I th
like quote unquote bad
hmm.
acting
Yeah.
is and sometimes more often than not more interesting than good acting.
Yeah, and sometimes
Um
it's just about a choice that someone makes.
in this movie, like a lot of people talk about like they were doing 75 takes of a scene,
Hmm.
100 takes of a scene,
Hmm.
Harvey Keitel and
Time,
Jennifer Jason Leigh and
yeah,
Gary Oldman
yeah.
all famously walked off the movie because they
Uh-huh.
couldn't handle it and they
Yeah.
couldn't, clear their schedules the way that
He made
these,
Tom Cruise walk through a door 90 times.
yeah,
And
like just like, yeah, just a random scene, like not even a consequential scene.
right.
Vanessa Shaw thought she was going to be there for 2 weeks. She was there for 2 months.
Yeah.
That scene in the pool room with Sidney Pollack took 3 weeks to film.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Just
So did
like an
the
insane amount of time.
the flashbacks of her of the sort of fantasy of her with the army guy,
Oh yeah, that took six
which is
days,
like
right? Yeah,
10 or 15 seconds of film maybe. It was
right.
3 days, which Kubrick banned Tom Cruise from the set for.
Yeah, and they
And
wouldn't let them share notes,
right.
and yet they were living in a replica of Stanley Kubrick's apartment. They were
Hmm.
living in that place.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was their wallets and their change, and on the
Yeah.
dresser, and sorry, I'm like tracing thoughts back,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
of just of Tom Cruise's performance
Hmm.
and why it is great.
Yeah.
You're talking about going like literally living on the set, living this part for a year and a half,
Hmm.
thinking, not knowing that it's going to be a year and a half, thinking that
Yeah.
it's going to be maybe a
Yeah.
third of that tops.
He had cleared
Um,
his schedule basically
at the top of his game, he had just
yeah,
done
yeah.
$500 million movies in a row.
Hmm. He's coming off of Mission Impossible,
He's coming off of an
which
Oscar from
which
Jerry
literally,
Maguire,
yeah, which
right?
literally launches his flagship franchise. And he wanted to make a movie with Kubrick so badly. There's a thing he says at the top of that interview on the Blu-ray where he goes, his movies are timeless, and I wanted to be a part of that. It makes me think a lot about like how Tom Cruise really early in his career, or almost midway through or a third through his career or whatever, he was like he was really dialing in on I want to work with these people. I want to be in these kinds of movies, but also I'm the biggest movie star in the world. My name's above the title, you know, and people are going to go
Yeah.
see this movie because I'm in it. And you could argue that this movie is what completely changes the trajectory of his career. Because after this, he never, ever takes another real chance in this kind of way
Between this and
up until this
Magnolia
day, which
is
is
like
the
a
same year.
singular year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. He goes and makes Magnolia right after he finishes this.
These two roles
Uh,
dealing with the fragility and weakness of male ego,
yes,
and
and two of his best performances.
yeah,
I mean,
ever, and timeless performances. And
yeah,
yeah.
but it's so interesting that that he kind of started out as as a guy who really wanted to be taken seriously and seen in very important films by important filmmakers, and then just kind of becomes a de facto action star and just like triples down on that over the next decade plus.
Well, I mean,
It's just a really interesting.
I can't imagine the mind fuck of this though. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, of being the biggest movie star in the whole world.
Hmm.
Like hitting a stride that few actors have achieved, right? Like in the year 1996. And then just like the Bulls at the end of their run, just being like, I'm out, like for a
Yeah,
while. I'll see you guys
yeah,
in 2 years. You know,
yeah,
like
yeah. I'm gonna go do this thing with my wife.
and it's going to destroy me. It's
It's,
going to
it's,
destroy our
it's
relationship.
gonna kill our
It's going
marriage.
to emasculate me completely and make me
Yeah,
doubt myself
yeah.
for a year and a half. I'm going to like subject myself to like basically the life of a reality TV star now.
Hmm.
Um like level of scrutiny
Yeah.
and mind fuckery with this director who is like the ultimate craftsman and the actor's worst director, from what it
Hmm.
sounds
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
of just
And
kind
the
of
way,
like being unapproachable
uh-huh.
for acting notes
Well, and also just demanding
in a
so
way.
much. He's
Yeah.
just demand. I mean, the course infamous stories of him and Shelley Duvall and The Shining. He demands everything from his actors and basically will not take no for an answer. He puts people through these psychological gauntlets in order to elicit this performance, and the so many takes thing is part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
theory that a lot of the takes he used on this movie are like some of the quote unquote bad ones, you know,
See, that's the
because
thing.
he just wanted to like see what could happen.
And Nicole Kidman gets, I think she speaks to that well. It's kind of speaking around that in
Hmm.
that same interview that you're talking about, where they're doing so many takes that get to a point of relaxation.
Hmm.
You know,
Kind of
they're living this
delirious.
place. Yeah, and they're doing so, you know, they're going on emotional roller coasters, they're trying out different things. They have all this time to do what they want. And so takes are going to take on a weird quality. He can pull from all these different emotional like
Hmm.
places as an editor that he can now link together a movie that has a lyrical and dreamlike, you know, pacing.
Yeah.
The fight in the bedroom after
Uh-huh.
she's caught.
One of the best scenes. I just.
It's wild, man. And the way that
It's
people talk about it,
incredible.
they're like, the acting is so bad. And somebody was like, this is always the point in the movie where I'm like, is this actually a good movie? Like
Well, I
you're
think the main complaint is that she's not really believably stoned or believably drunk. Because if you think about it,
it
she's still
is
drunk from the party. You
it's a
know,
little 1999 stoned
it's
acting. Like
yeah,
it's a little bit
she's
of
not,
that.
and that's
But
also
then
not.
again, it's bad acting makes you lean in a little bit. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah, for sure.
catches you. It catches you and you're like, what is going on?
And I still,
Is she acting? Like what's happening here? And you're
well,
kind of
what's
sitting in his shoes of like,
mhm.
whoa. I thought we were about to bone.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. And it's like she's like, he says one wrong thing, and that sets me off to say all this stuff that's
understandable. I
been
guess
like
that's
pent up,
understandable that
like
you would want to fuck you.
yeah, been pent up
Things never to say.
under the surface for months probably. I mean, these two characters, I think, I think ultimately this movie is portraying a portrait of a marriage, a sexless marriage, I'm gonna say, of these
Yeah.
two people who were probably once very much in love when they were very young and have gradually kind of grown apart in both their maybe like career aspirations and also who they feel like they are and who they
Well,
want to be. I think
I,
like
I think I
uh
think I think that's drawn pretty clearly. She's
yeah.
out of a job. She's
Hmm.
unemployed. She's an unemployed mother at Christmas time,
Right.
and it's unclear whether she is at all responsible for the art gallery going bankrupt,
Right.
which she used to manage.
Yeah.
She kind of laughs at it at the
Hmm.
party, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of unclear how sort of subject is. I think that's really important. That and
Her laugh, I want to sidebar just the fact that the part of her performance that is her laughing because it happens a lot. And
uh
I think that's a really interesting part of that performance. But yeah, continue
no,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, and she kind of laughs that off. They're 9 years into their marriage.
They have a young daughter
They have a 7-year-old daughter.
and they're well
So
off. I mean, it's not like they're, they are very wealthy. He's a
right,
doctor
but
who
she's at
makes,
home. She's
yeah,
a stay-at-home mom right
yeah.
now,
Hmm.
and is bored of it. And like, if you really like, I like dissecting that the opening shots. That the first line is, "Honey, where's my wallet?" Or "Have you
Hmm.
seen my wallet?"
Hmm.
She knows exactly where it is.
And
He walks into the bathroom, and she's hot as hell,
the first
and
shot is
peeing, and he
her
doesn't look
naked
at, and she
ass.
asks, yeah, the first shot is that,
That's the
and she
first shot of
asks
the
him
movie.
how he looks, and he doesn't look at her, and she
Yeah,
looks amazing,
yeah.
and it's just like, okay, yeah, you see the,
You see
she's
the cracks,
totally, yeah,
and there's this whole
goofy
other
looking.
just amazing kind of metatextual layer of the fact that they are a real life couple and that they're spending this year and a half of their lives with this fucking madman in London who won't go anywhere else to shoot because he's afraid of flying. So they literally have to recreate
Right.
these certain blocks of New York on these sound stages in
Have to
London.
build Sesame Street.
Yeah, yeah. This kind of like sort of what's the puzzle that like you can't solve? It's just like a loop. It's sort of like infinite loop puzzle. I can't remember what the name of. There's a term for it, but I think the block that he's perpetually on in the movie is that like he's just sort of walking around the same street corner
Yeah.
over and over
It's like
from
the
different angles,
same from shot
which
from
is
different
just
ways.
so fascinating. Like, yeah, you're in New York, but you only ever see three buildings, and he walks in like the coffee shop just happens to be like right across the street from the prostitute's apartment, which just
Hmm.
happens to be down the street
It's Sesame Street.
from his house call. It's like it's so that stuff. I think is primarily where a lot of the sort of interpretation of it being a dream comes from. At least that stuff and sort of obviously the orgy and everything else. Nicole, I mean, she's just phenomenal in this part. I think it's one of her easily one of her best performances. And the stuff that she's doing where she's kind of like play acting the drunken stoned that feels unnatural. It feels that way because I think it's like intended to be. And also she's like there's a certain point where she kind of cracks like in the scene. You can kind of tell where it was probably like take 80 or whatever, and she kind of cracks and she does this crazy thing where she's talking about the women in his doctor's office and she's like, I bet they while they're getting their little titties squeezed, she's
Titty
like
squeeze.
titties squeezed, what his little dicky looks like.
Yep.
She's doing this wild like modulation of her
Oh
voice, these
yeah.
squealing things, and and his reaction is just pure like stupefied. There's just so much there's so much between them
Well,
where
yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Like it starts to play with your reality and the editing
yeah,
of that scene
yeah, I think
because
so.
the editing, like his camera is totally still, and
Hmm.
over the course of her monologue, the
It
camera
starts to
is
move.
moving
Yeah,
and is
because
moving
it
with
want
her.
yeah
It's
because it
reacting to her.
hmm
She moves, the camera moves, and then it kind of builds to the laughing and kind of goes to the
and then she
ground with
kind of
her when
falls to
she
the ground.
falls.
Yeah,
It's like, and then that music starts in the,
yeah.
It's
That's
like
when
you
she
go down the
starts
rabbit hole. Is
really,
my
yeah,
interpretation. Like you literally
yeah.
fall down.
That's
You
when she
know.
starts really talking about the fantasy. You know, she says she would have left her family just to get fucked by this guy.
Yeah.
There's so much real kind of brutal darkness uh just under the surface of, but not even under the surface. It's really kind of on the surface in a lot of it. So this movie, my reading of this movie this time, it felt like we'll probably like dive off the deep end in this segue, but it felt like to me the most Lynchian movie that I've seen in a long time, not directed by David Lynch. And the majority of people when they talk about something being Lynchian or describe it in that way, they don't really know like exactly what they're describing other than it makes them feel like they're in a David Lynch movie kind of thing. It's a lot to do with the imagery or a particular style of like soundscape or dream logic. But this movie, I think, is truly Lynchian in that regard of Kubrick is deliberately setting us up to make everything look and feel as if it were a dream, but presenting it completely as reality. And
Mm.
and that goes down to the performances, which I also think are kind of Lynchian, people behaving in certain ways that they don't really ever behave with in each other in real life,
Mhm.
people talking to each other in ways that they don't actually talk to each other. When he sees Nick Nightingale at the piano and they start to talk and like catch up, they're talking as if they maybe have just met, but they're also supposed to be old friends from medical school, but they also haven't seen each other in 10 years. The way that the story unfolds, the sort of like propulsive nature of like, well, then suddenly now he's with Nick at this club, and Nick is telling him about these parties that he goes to, and he's like the high. It's so Lynchian in the way of you're constantly second guessing yourself as to whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
But also it's like that almost doesn't matter.
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
really matters is like what the actual experience you're getting from it is and how it's making you feel. And that's why it feels that way to me, and much more so than a lot of like I think newer films that a lot of people sort of like just kind of slap that attribute on to make it sort of to kind of
Yeah.
like put it in that same vein.
In terms of Lynchian, yeah, I see a lot of aesthetic things. There's the thing that made me that really made me go, "Oh, David Lynch."
Hmm.
Was when he's taking the car to the mansion for the first time.
Yeah.
The crossfades of the car driving at night
Hmm.
out of New York, the pacing of those crossfades and the lighting of the street put me in such a, and this precedes that movie, Mulholland Drive,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
just driving up to
Yeah.
the party,
Hmm.
uh, and scenes from that. Something about it was just like, oh, and just knowing the orgy and the ritual of that, the curtains, like it, yeah, that's very so David Lynch,
Yeah.
so Mulholland Drive, so
Well, it all being
twin,
so
all of it,
yeah.
and
It all
then
being
other
so
things too, the Nick Nightingale, the light on the table, the glowing crystal
hmm
ball
yeah.
that lights his face like
Hmm.
blue
Taking a
velvet.
call and writing a word on a napkin,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
that's
and
it's
then Tom Cruise
Fidelio,
takes the napkin and reads the word. It's very
Silencio. It's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's this kind of deliberate staging of a hyper reality that's like the story is about something, it's about these two people.
Well,
But
it's
but the
yeah.
way that we're going to show it to you and the way that you're going to be kind of pulled along through it is going to disorient you, and even the ways like how he goes Dr. Bill, Tom Cruise's character, he goes into a coffee shop and orders a coffee, and there's a waitress there, and he's asking her if she knows Nick next door,
Mhm.
who's like playing next door. And then there's a later scene where he goes into a different kind of he goes into like a more of a restaurant cafe style thing, and the waitress there looks like almost
Looks
identical
a lot like her. Yeah,
to
there's
the other
doppelgangers throughout.
waitress.
Yeah,
There's doppelgangers throughout the entire movie.
yeah.
Alan Cummings' character,
Dharma or
who
Greg.
seems to just like come out of a different movie,
Yeah.
who just has
I
that
had an entire different interpretation of his
that
scene.
one scene, and that's it. Yeah, there's a lot to me that felt not in that he was trying to ape any kind of style or anything, but it is that subverting certain conventions of storytelling to actually make and Kubrick does this a lot. I mean, he does it all throughout The Shining. He does it in Clockwork
Well, I
Orange.
think it's important to say that this comes from Trom Novell, which is
Yes, yeah, of
let me
course.
be the latest podcaster to mispronounce his name.
Yeah.
Alfred Schnitzler. I've heard so
Schnitzler?
many people mispronounce
I know, yeah,
his
yeah.
name of the.
It's pretty simple.
That's what it is.
Schnitzler.
Yeah, Schnitzler.
Yeah.
You can say it. We can all say it.
Schnitzler. A 1922 novella.
Before that,
Right.
wasn't it? I thought it was like turn of the.
I think it's 1922
I'll buy it.
is what I
That's
read.
fun. That's interesting. I thought it was even earlier.
But translates to dream story,
A dream novel.
dream novel. Okay.
So immediately, yeah, you have this structure of the dream and the structure of the novel, decidedly different than structure of movies, which, I sent you a video on YouTube that compares this to a 1969 adaptation of the same story.
Oh, okay. I wasn't able to watch that.
It's pretty striking, and I read maybe the first 20 or 30 pages of a dream novel,
Okay.
and there's like, did you see that one that I sent you? Let me give this to you. This is one page from a dream novel.
Okay.
Or was it a him like something him like a little like a reproach, or was it a covert threat? He raised her hands to his lips. You may believe me, even though it sounds trite, that in every woman I thought I loved, it was always you I was looking for. I know that better than you can understand it, Albertina. A dispirited smile passed over her face. And suppose before meeting you, I too had gone on a search for a mate, she asked. The look in her eyes changed, becoming cool and impenetrable, and he allowed her hands to slip from his, as though he had caught her lying or committing a breach of faith. She, however, continued, "Oh, if you men knew," and again was silent. "If we knew? What do you mean by that?" In a strangely harsh voice, she replied, "About what you imagine, my dear." The pot is making you aggressive.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
pretty
not
direct,
the pot. It's
pretty
you.
direct lift,
Yeah.
Like that scene is, changed, but it's in
Yeah.
a different voice. Essentially the same thing. And the ending, her speech at the ending is almost entirely lifted from the novel. Like so much of it is very closely.
Does the book also end with the word fuck?
I doubt it. But I mean, there's orgies. I've only read a little bit of it, but I was struck by how immediately I was like, oh, this is familiar. This is pretty close to the same.
Yeah, well, I
structure.
mean, we should go ahead and mention that he wanted to adapt this book very early in his career. He started thinking about it in the 60s.
Yeah, this was supposed to be his follow up to 2001.
Which is, I mean,
wild.
it kind of makes sense that that everyone was like, no, we're not doing that. At that time.
You haven't seen a Lolita, right?
No, I haven't seen Lolita. Is that the
I
next
watched-
one? Is that the very next one after 2001?
Lolita's 1962.
Lolita's before
It's insanely
before
like,
2001. Okay.
yeah. I tried to watch that before this. I was going to, and I ran out of time. Like
That was a
you're
very
like, this
well
is
known
fucked up.
and well regarded novel, though. That was Nabokov. Like, I think that property,
And it was a big hit theatrically.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And David Lynch, like it's always mentioned as like when he first brings Kubrick up, like that's one of the first ones. It doesn't hold up as well, but I mean, it's wild to see. I was talking about subject matter, and I remember Kubrick hearing somebody talking about Kubrick being like, don't you think that these themes are like dated? Like, and he's like, no, this is the same.
Well, I mean,
we're dealing
yeah.
with the same thing, and
Yeah.
and that's the whole thing is that the themes of the novel are just like so relatable, so timeless, so ahead of their time. Jealousy, what is withheld,
Mhm.
and,
And
and then
just the whole like
the power structure of marriage,
power of marriage, the power structure of being a member of society, especially being a member of high society. You know, Bill is clearly like he very much wants to be part of the club of Ziegler's kind of people. You know, she says, "Why do you think he invites us to these things every year?" And he's like, "Well, this is, you know, I make house calls. This is what making house calls gets you." Like he wants to be part of this, which I think is ultimately why he decides to follow try and follow Nick to the party or make his own way to the party. It's not just that he's pissed off about his wife fantasizing about another man and that their marriage is in this rut. He wants to be one of the elite, you know.
Yeah.
And that theme will be forever. It's evergreen, you know. It's like
Yeah.
the stories about those people will be told forever. They've been told forever. And especially, I think what is so cool is when you juxtapose it with something so small, but also so universal as a marriage. There's just all this really interesting, different little interplay happening there. This time when I watched it, I was like, oh, Nicole Kidman is actually in a lot less of this movie than I remember.
Oh yeah.
She's basically gone from the whole kind of middle, basically second act.
Oh, yeah.
And he only comes back to her. Well, he comes back to her after the first night, I guess, right? And that's when when he comes back when she's laughing in her sleep. And just one of the most kind of like
I was fucking so many men.
really
So
disturbing, disturbing scenes, but also just how like the nature of how she is laughing in that particular way, and that as he wakes her up, she is kind of like legitimately feels like she's coming out of a dream, and then describes that dream to him, and he's just continuously being kind of like pummeled by this, this kind of like perceived inadequacy that I think he feels about himself. And it's so funny that he's like, well, I'm just gonna go out and look for a good time and try to have sex with a bunch of people, and he never gets there
does.
with anyone. He tries to he doesn't even solicit a prostitute. A prostitute solicits him. You know, he asks her, "What do you recommend?" He's so out of his
know what to
depth
say. Yeah.
and out of his element, and just
He doesn't even know what to ask for. He doesn't know how this goes down. She freezes, probably thinks he's a cop. Like, the promise and the achieving the, subversion of gratification, desire and gratification.
Let's go through some of the scenes we haven't hit yet.
Yeah, we could go through some scenes.
We haven't talked about the costume shop yet.
Oh man!
So he finds out from Nick that he's got to have
that guy's name,
Millich?
the actor's name.
Oh,
Millich
Sergibian. I don't know. He's an incredible character actor. He's in so much stuff.
Yeah.
He always shows up and just like hits a home run for like 2 minutes and then fucking exits. Yeah, so Bill is told by Nick that he needs a cloak or some kind of costume and a mask, and Bill just happens to know like one of his old patients has a costume shop, and he goes there. It's like 2 a.m. They're not possibly open, but he finds this guy who now owns the store, and I guess lives in the building, and they go looking for this costume in there. Oh, I think we should mention that he's just like constantly using his doctor status to get him everywhere.
This whole class thing, this whole he runs into Nick. Nick's like, no, we can't go any further. He's like, we're fucking doing this, man.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't have to have any part in it. Just tell me where it is,
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Always pulling that doctor card.
Somebody tries to refuse him, he's like, it's okay, I'm a doctor.
Yeah, yeah. As if that just completely changes the circumstances. But the funny thing is that, a lot of people, upon hearing that, are like, well, okay. Well, if it's a medical issue, which also contributes to the kind of dream logic of like, there's a lot of stuff that just like doesn't make sense as far as
Well,
this sort of
to me, that
personal
is like
interaction.
that probably comes right out of the novel, right? Like all these
Yeah,
beats,
yeah.
all these steps, and it's like that is so weird. But if you're like, oh, 1900, 1922, that makes sense that like
hmm
somebody like is going
hmm
around, in Vienna or wherever it was initially set,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, talking to people as a doctor is
hmm
going to open these doors. That's
Right.
that's the maybe the other thing that I want to mention about Trom Novelle, and that a lot of the weirdness just comes from following so closely to a novel, and a novel that feels weird to how am I trying to say the structure of the novel, and especially that dream structure and open
hmm
structure and kind of meandering structure
Yeah.
of Trom Novelle makes it feel
Kind
weird.
of
Makes it feel
plotless.
weird and makes it feel like so different than a lot of movies from 1999.
Yeah, yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
It's a strange
it,
thing to kind of try and bring into the modern day,
yeah,
as he did at the time.
like the weird, like being so dedicated to the beats of that book, give it a weirdness
hmm
that feels unmodern in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe against the grain of what was going on in 1999.
Yeah. But also I think it just gives so much depth to these characters.
Yeah, and then
Especially Bill. I mean, he's they're doing so much interesting stuff of just like playing with the celebrity of Tom Cruise of like
mm-hmm.
every woman wants to sleep with him. Everywhere he goes, people just open doors for him. And he's
Yet
also
he is
like,
emasculated, and yet
yeah,
he,
yeah, exactly. He's on this
the
precipice of
like
like
right
he
before
can't,
gratification, it's just
yeah,
like
yeah,
taken
he
away.
can't actually like be the cool guy that everybody sort of thinks he is, you know? So yeah, so Milich, they find his young daughter in the shop fooling around with these two older Asian guys who are in wigs and funny outfits and
And
stuff.
makeup, powdered makeup.
Yeah. Another scene that feels a little Lynchian in a
Oh,
way of just like
totally.
just a very out of place kind of
What is going on?
weird sort of sidetrack. And then he goes to the mansion. He takes a cab, and of course the reason that they're able to ultimately suss him out is that he's the only guy who shows up in a cab instead of a limo. um, so he's kind of marked right
And he's
away.
late to the party.
He's
He
late. Yeah, he's
to
like the
a
last
party
one
that's
to
already
walk in.
starting late.
Yeah, he gives the password, and then he gives it again when they ask him
A
in the
second time.
house. Yeah, and so he's just kind of wandering through the whole initial kind of ritual scene. It's fucking scary. It's like
Yeah.
it really
And
takes
is
its
kind of the
time.
core of the movie is
Yeah,
at like and is at the center of the allure of this movie. Like
yeah,
you don't know this movie, but you know that there's a fucking
hmm
orgy scene, and
yeah.
you know that it's
And everyone knows
weird,
the
and
kind of the
you
mask
know,
iconography and the cloak iconography, and that there's all these naked women who are in these ornate exotic masks, and the music is very strange and kind of propulsive around that time, and they're doing this kind of weird backwards Gregorian chant style thing. It's the first time in the movie where you're really like, oh shit, I have no idea where this could go. Like
yeah.
I like this. I might be about to watch some really strange, unreal shit. And the actual scene itself is really not that long. I mean, it's kind of, Bill makes his way through a few rooms. He sees some people fucking, but it's pretty like, tame sort like everything's kind of there's more focus I feel like on the background characters, on all the characters kind of watching and sort of just standing around. And he obviously doesn't want to participate, but he's very interested in seeing what's going on. Eventually a woman comes to him to try and take him away. I guess we skipped a crucial scene from the party earlier where he has to go into Ziegler's bathroom upstairs and help revive the sex worker who Ziegler was with, who OD'd, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's yeah.
that's a sort of a major part of, if you want to interpret it this way, that's a major part of this central scene. But this woman is like warning him. She's like, "You need to get out of here. You're in danger." you don't want to be here, you don't belong here, kind of thing. And he's
Immediately sniffs him out somehow.
yeah, yeah, and he's like, "Who are you? How do you know?" They eventually remove him and bring him down back to the central chamber,
Well, this
where
happens
they're
several
like,
times, and you see that people that have noticed him
mm-hmm.
when he initially entered notice him again and try to
Yeah, yeah, the guy
take
that
it
I
to
mentioned
try to
earlier with the
steer him
kind of
off.
like triangular hat
Yeah,
and the bigger mask.
and
He's
the
part of that.
woman comes and gets him again, whose voice is played by Kate Blanchett.
Wild. It's fucking wild. Crazy to think
Um,
about. They kick
forced
him out
onto
more
this
or
room.
less, and they're sort of about to take a sort of punishment out on him, but the woman sort of kind of
The most
offers
emasculating
herself.
thing, you have to
Yeah,
get
the
naked,
woman
Tom Cruise.
offers herself up instead, sort of makes a sacrifice instead, which is probably one of the most unbelievable things about the movie.
So, so this time through, especially throughout this and in the scenes immediately after, I was intentionally trying to watch it as, okay, this is all staged. This is all part of the ritual.
Hmm.
Somebody's going to come as tribute. This and the events following are all like, David Fincher's The Game. Like it's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
controlled. It's all part of what they've always done.
They've sort of
When
singled him
people have
out.
tried to come in,
Right. Yeah.
this is what happens.
Yeah.
And this is how we keep ourselves safe, is by scaring the fuck out of these people. And
Hmm.
you know
Yeah, that
there's
makes I
there's
mean, it makes
people over
total
here.
sense.
There's people over here that don't want any part of this, that you just walked past, that are slow dancing out over in this hallway.
Yeah.
But we're all gonna fuck
Yeah.
you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna get you naked, and then we're gonna get you drugged,
Yeah.
um, or at least threatened to.
Yeah. But then
And then it immediately snaps to he's walking into his door at home.
mhm.
There's
Yeah.
there's to me the feeling that there's some significant information between these two scenes.
Hmm. There's a really interesting thing in this film that I feel like other than when we actually see him just sort of in the taxi, kind of riding around. We see him riding around in the taxi and we see him show up to the house. But other than that, we never really see either of them actually leave a place or arrive at a place,
Right.
right? There's always a very clever fade or dissolve. The first time it's they're leaving their apartment and then they just are suddenly at the party.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this where it just kind of cuts immediately to him in his
It's a
apartment.
crossfade that feels like it's a crossfade that immediately draws to The Shining, and that crossfade is The Shining music. When they
Yeah. Something else I noted about the party is that this could, this probably, I'm sure somebody sussed this out as far as the it's all a dream kind of conspiracy, but so Nick and his sort of trio are playing at the party, and Bill recognizes him, and when he goes over to talk to him, and Nick comes down from the piano, there's music still playing. And there's music playing and it's almost as if he calls attention to this because the shot actually follows.
There's no
the two of
change in the
them.
music that's
There's
being
no
played.
change. I mean, I think they do stop
But
the
it
first song.
pauses for him
but
to
then there's
speak
like
and say we're taking a break.
yeah,
and then
the music
picks
immediately
back up.
starts again. Right.
Yeah.
And there's no, there's no loudspeakers anywhere. The shot follows them all the way from one room. For a second, I was like, oh, maybe there's another band in the other room. Like these people are so rich that they can rent, a band for each room in their house. But then they go in the other room where Nicole Kidman is dancing with this old Hungarian man who's just desperately trying to fuck her. He's like a count or something, and just like takes a sip of her champagne and
It's so
is
good.
just putting on these
I love
really
it.
thick moves. But there's no music happening in there either. So there's this like really cool, fun thing that he's just like playing with your perception the entire time.
What is artifice? What is real?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Playing with the convention of this movie isn't in and of itself a dream.
Right.
And so I'm going to play with with your sense of reality
Hmm.
from start to finish.
Yeah.
And
While
I'm going
making
to use
it.
the convention
Mhm.
of a Christmas movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the decided, the a big change from the novel to the screen.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that, and the inclusion of that, the artifice of a
Uh-huh.
Christmas movie,
Uh-huh.
I
And
think.
of the ultimate kind of goal of that holiday, really, which is to consume and to be
I think a
kind
lot
of
of the themes are kind of wrapped up in it,
yeah.
in terms of the family of the sacred family,
Yeah,
and
yeah. They don't really hit it home, I feel like, until the final scene when they're actually out shopping. When they actually
that final scene.
go,
I watched that final scene like 5 times today.
it's amazing.
There's so
When
much going
they
on. There's so
actually
much going
go
on,
shopping.
and so much happening visually
Yeah.
condensed. That movie just that shot is just staged, and there's so much in it
hmm
that's different than the rest of this movie. It's like
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's just like jam packed with people and things,
Yeah.
and you don't know where to look.
hmm
And
Yeah. The daughter
um,
is kind of like she's there,
we
but
can
she's
talk.
also
We can
off.
dissect the reading of
Yeah.
that last scene.
She's there, but she's also kind of like off running around and stuff. But
But
so
in
that goes, yeah, back to his apartment. That goes into the Alice is laughing in her sleep and wakes up and tells him the dream that she was having. The next day, he goes back to the house where the orgy was in the daytime. No one's there. It's barred up. But this mysterious car pulls up, and a man, or is it a
Well,
car, or is a man
first he
just like,
goes. Well, first he goes to
well, he goes back to take
he
the,
goes to Nick,
yeah.
and then
He goes to the hotel where okay, let's talk about him going back
yeah.
to the hotel because
I have a very strong theory about that now.
because he's in the next day he's at the coffee shop and he's asking that woman about, do you
He's
know
trying to
him?
find
Do you
Nick.
know if he's going to be there? I mean, he's trying to find him because he wants to know more. And she's like, I don't know, but I can tell you where the hotel that he's staying at or whatever. So he goes to the hotel
Hotel Jason.
and what was it?
Hotel Jason.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. And finds out from the desk clerk, played by Alan Cumming, that Nick is gone. That he's checked
Mhm.
out already. He checked out at 5 a.m. that morning. And
Escorted by two guys, and he had a bruise on his cheek, and he looked scared, and he
yeah,
tried to pass him a note, but the guys took the note away
yeah,
and got him on a plane,
yeah, supposedly.
and supposedly,
Yeah. But
um,
what Alan Cumming is doing here is fantastic.
yeah,
It's
his acting is so
unreal.
loaded.
It's unreal. He's just
Um,
he's I mean, I mean if anyone hasn't seen it, he's just like blatantly flirting with Tom Cruise, like coming on to
that's
him
not my reading it
hard.
at all. That
Really?
is not.
Okay.
That is not my reading at all. I think that that moment is loaded with he. Okay, so he is coming on to him. I shouldn't say that. He is
Yeah.
coming on to him. He is obviously attracted to him,
Yeah.
and I have a few readings of the way that that could go. Let me go to my notes.
Yeah. Do it.
What I really think is that Ziegler's people got, or Ziegler himself went to Alan Cumming before and was like, "This is what we need you to say. Here's some money,
Mm.
and this is what you have to tell him. You have to say these words specifically and say
hmm
it, because the way his eyes are moving around, the way he is
Yeah.
looking
He's
around,
doing a
he's
lot of
either lying to him, he was either at the party himself and was
hmm
lying to him, which is hard to believe for a hotel clerk. So
Yeah, I
I
don't think he was
feel
there.
that Ziegler's people or other people from the party, either probably Ziegler himself,
Yeah.
maybe the party people, got to him and instructed him as to what to say. That's my reading of that. Or yeah, that he was placed there to say that.
Well,
That he
why
was
would they intentionally believe to lead Bill to believe that there was a struggle, though?
to let him know that he is
To
unsafe.
intimidate him? Okay.
To
Yeah.
intimidate him,
Yeah.
to let him know that he is unsafe, that his family is unsafe, and to make him believe that he is in fact dead or at least
hmm
hurt.
Yeah.
Hopefully that would intimidate him and make him stop looking around about last night, except that he goes to the hospital morgue after that. Well, first he goes to Millich,
Right. hmm
and has the
Goes to
run-in
take the
with the
cloak
daughter.
back, realizes that he doesn't have the mask.
My reading of that, I have questions about that. Did they take the mask off of him and plant it in Nicole Kidman's bed?
Yeah,
while he's
I think
gone.
he obviously just didn't leave the party with the mask. I mean, he takes the mask off there, right? They demand that he takes the mask off.
Yes, I think he is still
Um,
holding it when we see him though. They don't take put
yeah,
hands on him or
but we also
anything.
don't see him
But
leave.
we don't see him leave. We don't
Yeah.
see what they say to him before he leaves. We don't see them
Hmm.
threaten him.
Yeah, they
We
just
don't
tell him
see
to
that
go,
crowd around
basically.
him move at all.
Yeah, they
So,
just tell him to go.
they have the mask
Hmm.
and there's some exchange about, you know, don't fuck with us,
Yeah.
give us this, or whatever, which I think is more interesting. I think his reaction when he sees the mask next to Nicole Kidman
Well,
is is
but
is
she doesn't react to it at all.
she
She's
doesn't
li
react to him.
she's lying in
And
bed there, and it's lying on the pillow next to her, which to me makes me believe that she found it and has placed it there, and when he comes home,
or he's just she
they're gonna
wakes
have to
up and
talk
she
about it.
sees him crying about this mask.
Yeah.
So maybe he brought that to bed and she's like, "Why are you crying about
Right.
and
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this mask?" And I think that that's
Which she doesn't ask
somewhere
about. She doesn't say anything,
we don't get the
right?
chance to see her.
Is that all that he says is
Yeah.
I'll tell he breaks down, he starts crying, he says I'll tell you everything. And then that hang on, I think we skipped something. Oh, we skipped it when
We've
he
skipped a few scenes. We skipped Marion. We
yeah.
skipped
Oh yeah, we had the whole Marion bit. I forgot
uh,
too. That's very funny. So there's a
we
moment
skipped
in that scene.
We skipped Sydney Pollock. No, we haven't skipped.
That one's coming
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a moment in that scene where he gets a call from, this is earlier on, of course, but he gets a call that one of his longtime patients has died, and he goes to see the patient's daughter, and she,
This is what gets like prevent. He basically the at the end of Nicole Kidman's dream when she has confessed to him about having this fantasy about
mhm.
fucking a naval officer that she saw a year ago, or
Yeah,
a phone call immediately interrupts,
right. That's the very
and
next thing he does.
he's got to go. He doesn't have a chance to react to
Yeah,
this story at all.
yeah.
He just
But the
he
woman,
has a good excuse to leave.
yeah, the woman, Marion, sort of throws herself. She reveals first that she's engaged, but then she throws herself at him. In that scene, so Cruz, there's really two, maybe three moments in this where Cruz, to me, is like doing his best Jack Nicholson, and one is
All
when,
throughout, and Nicole too.
yeah, well, one is when they first fight, and the way he says, "I don't know,
You're my
Alice,
wife.
because you're my wife."
I said
You know, maybe because you're my wife
the
and
way
we
he
have a
laughs,
child.
the way
Um,
when Nick jumps off stage and they look at each other and then they laugh. They have that pause and then
yeah,
that's
yeah,
so like
yeah. That's very
um
Jack. But
it's
the
the whole
Marion scene
cadence.
too. He
Yeah.
does
Oh yeah.
something when he's talking about when she's telling him what's going on and stuff. He's like, "Well, I think that's going to be really good for you." And just the way he delivers it is
Mhm.
so Jack.
I think she's channeling him in her initial monologue. And in her monologues,
Mm.
I think that I hear a familiar cadence to
She does
the
this really
what you're
interesting
talking about
thing.
when the titties and just like
Yeah.
the ride that she takes. And it's so funny to me to go back to like good and bad acting and appraisals of their performances. Like everybody is like Jack Nicholson, Jack Nicholson, Jack Nicholson. Like I just think like his performance is give me the bat, Wendy. Like it's also bad and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was probably considered way more bad back in the day. Spielberg
Hmm.
talks openly about how he didn't like the performance the first time he saw it.
Yeah.
Um,
And then he watched it 25 more times and was like,
yeah,
it's the best movie ever made.
yeah, and so I feel that way,
Yeah.
about
She's
this.
also doing, she does this really interesting thing where she deliberately speaks very slowly for a lot of lines. That first scene when they're at the party, when she's dancing with the
Mm.
guy, she's doing stuff like, because I'm married. And then when they're talking later,
That's nice.
she's doing the same exact thing. She's doing this really weird, like very calm, slow delivery of, and it's like, is she drunk or is she just like oblivious to the world around her, or it's just a choice, and
It's a dream.
it's a choice that you can't really pinpoint.